Ladies and gentlemen, the Snowbreak beta has been up for about a week or maybe a week and a half now, and it is soon coming to a close. I think next week it is closing, and I want to take this time to go through all the systems and showcase everything to do with Snowbreak, at least to a certain degree, not to the fullest degree, because obviously we're only level about 49 right now and we haven't experienced 100% of the game, but I'm going to showcase all the systems that we're going to need to know to a basic level, at least when the game launches in the future. It's going to be split up into different sections, covering the different parts, like the character building, the end game, the content, the story, the rolling, you know, the nuanced systems that the game might have. So I'm going to cover those individually in different sections. So with that outlined, let's get into the video. So I'm going to start with the most important system, or at least the system that most of you are most likely curious about, which is the gacha system. Now here it's called the Echo. It's this big old button here, the Echo button, and that'll take you to the gacha system. Now in the closed beta there was 3 banners up on launch. There was no featured character banner, so how the featured character banner works I will not be able to tell you, but there were 3 banners up. There will be an on-launch beginner banner, much like how it was in Genshin and HSR, where you put in 50 rolls and you're guaranteed 1 5-star, and this is obviously going to be at a discounted price down to 8 rolls, but you still get the 10 roll. And other than that, we have the standard banner, which is going to consist of obviously the standard characters, as we can see on screen, as well as the standard weapon banner, which is going to have a plethora of other, you know, weapons that you can get throughout the game, which is great. You can pick a drop rate weapon and it's all fine and dandy. Now, the easiest way to summarize how the pity system and the guaranteed system works is it's kind of a combination of a few different games. And I would say it's a combination of Tower of Fantasy's gacha, as well as something like Nikke Goddess of Victory's gacha. As we can see here in the bottom of the screen, we have an operative echo pool, guaranteed orange tier operative within 52 echoes. Currently, I'm at 28 out of 80 echoes, and then if I get to that 80 threshold, I'm guaranteed a 5-star, but I can get it before that 80. And that's a counter of your pity, essentially. The weapon banner also has the same thing. It's out of 60, so you only need 60 pulls to get a weapon, and it's kind of a combination between that. But I should say this, the reason I will not be talking about the kind of guarantee of a character is because this is on the standard banners. These are not featured banners, so I'm not exactly sure how the featured banners are going to work, and that's why I say it may work like Tower of Fantasy. It may have the system of, you know, you roll a certain amount and then you get a certain currency for rolling, and you may go into a shop to then buy the character if you don't get them on the kind of RNG drops. So it may work like that, but for now, the standard banner has just an 80 pull pity, and you may get it before then, and if you do get it before then, it does reset it. Now, for those who are curious about the actual percentage drop rates, it's about a 0.7% for a 5-star and an 8% for a purple. It's quite okay. It's not, you know, astounding, but it's fine for the most part. And getting duplicates in this game is not an overly important thing, as I will get into that once we get into the kind of grinding section, as there is a way to farm shards for all rarity of characters. Same thing for the weapon banner. There is a percentage drop chance. It's about 0.7 again, 2.37 if you include the guaranteed, and it's quite fine. But for the weapon banner, you can pick a rate boosted weapon, depending on which one you want, and you can switch these freely. If I want to switch to the Space Cowboy, I can do that freely. If I want to switch to the Olympus, I can do that freely. So switching between which weapon you want to be the featured, or at least the rate boosted, is absolutely free and very good, very nice. But now that you've rolled on the ecosystem and acquired a few of the characters, maybe you've acquired one of your favorites and you've gotten a cool weapon, you're going to wonder how to build these things and what is the process of gearing up. Now, I should clarify as we jump into the operative section, which is where you will encounter your characters and the leveling up, is that you unlock these systems sequentially. So you're going to be slowly introduced to the systems one by one. Not all of them are chucked at you at the same time, which is a very nice and handy thing to do for the game developers, obviously, to do to you, to introduce all the systems slowly so you get accustomed to them and how they work. But for the sake of just getting through this, I'm going to explain all of them just in top to bottom order, because that's just how it's presented here. So as per usual, you have the character and you can just level up the character by using certain materials. You click upgrade and boom, the character is now level 49. That is bog standard in every gacha game. The same thing goes for the weapon. You get a weapon, you equip the weapon on the certain character. Obviously, each character has a specific weapon type. Fenny here is a shotgun character, so you need to equip a shotgun on her. You do that, and you upgrade the weapons the same way. Now, the 3 systems that are very vastly different to each other, and the other systems of upgrading your character, is the logistics, the manifestation, and the neuronics. Now, starting with logistics, this is, I will summarize, as the Stigmata system, if you have ever played Honkai Impact, or if you can kind of translate it to something like Genshin, where it's the artifact system. These are 3 things that you equip on your character, and there are set bonuses that you can activate to play a certain part in buffing buffing up your character, and they also have talents, which are small stat bonuses in certain areas. So I'm not going to get into the specifics of the stats because that is a very technical thing, but you can put together a set bonus and get some buffs and whatnot, and you have different attack percent increase, active skill damage increase, so on and so forth. There are different rarities, there are purples, there are yellows, there are greens, blues. Different rarities do different things, and it's all kind of simplistic to the sense of it's just the pieces that you equip on the character to give them a stat boost. It's quite simple and quite straightforward. The manifestation system, though, this is the getting of the duplicates. This is the acquisition of essentially your constellations, or starring up a character or rating up them, getting them from double S to triple S, so on and so forth. Now, this is kind of a mixture between, I will again use Genshin and Honkai Impact as the examples. It's kind of a mixture between them. It's kind of a constellation system where you have different nodes that give you one specific buff every so often, like you acquire it. So you have 5 different nodes here, and each node does something completely different. If we take a look at node 1 for Marianne, ADS now will mark enemies and so on and so forth. Take a look at node 2, Marianne's standard shot now increases ballistic damage and no longer clears some things. That's the one part that it takes from Genshin Impact, is the constellation system. But the part that it takes from something like Honkai Impact is the fact that you use shards to rate up the character. As you can see in the bottom right here, I have 4 out of 6 total needed shards to get one node. Now, the kind of interesting part that Snowbreak is trying to do here is that one node requires 9 purchases, or 9 kind of put-ins, essentially, if you will, put-ins. And so you go into this, and you'll see these nodes on the perimeter. Each node needs 6 shards in total to unlock, and then you need to get all of the 8 things on the perimeter, or these small stat boosts on the perimeter, to then buy the middle piece. Now, I should say, for these first 2 nodes, as I've done this with one of the characters, I believe, this lady here, these first 2 nodes cost you 6 shards per perimeter, and then 12 shards for the middle one. But it does increase in cost, as we can see here for the 3rd node, it's 9 shards per perimeter, and then I presume it's going to be something like, 14 or 16 shards for the middle. So it does increase exponentially, which is kind of okay. I've got no real problem with that, because shards are obviously farmable. I mentioned that earlier, and I'll get into that in the grinding section. But this is a-okay. Now, you may be wondering, how do you get these shards? Well, this is obviously the duplication system. And I omitted this from the ecosystem because obviously it's not specific to the ecosystem, but the shards are gotten from getting duplicates from the gacha system. Now, how many shards do you get per duplicate? Well, it changes depending on 4-star or 5-star. Now, if you get a duplicate of a 4-star, if I jump into the details here, a duplicate of a 4-star will give you 30 operative fragments, whilst a duplicate of a 5-star will give you 60 operative fragments. Now, I didn't do the maths by itself, so apology if I get the numbers wrong, but essentially, for a 4-star, it's going to take you 2 duplicates to get node 1, and then another 2 duplicates to get node 2, but for a 5-star, it's going to take you 1 duplicate, and then the cost is going to increase as you go down the line. But again, it's farmable to a certain degree, so it may be okay. But that is how the duplicate system works. It's quite simple, quite straightforward once you kind of hear it, but being introduced to it, seeing all these like different numbers and buying and shards and stats and whatnot, you're kind of confusing, isn't it? So that's kind of how it works. It's not too bad. As for Neuronics, the simplest way to look at this one is as character talents. This is small little nodes that you can pick and choose. I believe you can only choose 4 to maybe 5. I'm not exactly sure. Again, we haven't reached the end game, or I haven't reached the end game, but you can choose a certain amount of nodes, and each node plays a specific part in the character's kit. Because obviously the characters have skills. You have a normal skill, you have a support skill, which is when they're off-field, and you have an ultimate skill. And when you go into the Neuronics, the top row here, the top row Enhance and Special, that is to play to your skill. The middle row upgrades and buffs your support skill, and the bottom row upgrades your ultimate skill. And these are small ways that you can boost your character in a very specific playstyle to make them, a lot better in that specific way. If we take a look at Control in the bottom left here, Golden Sin can now paralyze, yada yada yada, for the first time, deals damage. And if we go to Operative, Golden Sin is what you get from the Center Stage ability, which is her ultimate ability. And it's quite a nice one. Now again, the one part I want to clarify is that I'm unsure if we're going to be able to get all 6, or you may have to pick and choose which one you want active at the time, because you can refund these for absolutely no cost. You get all the materials back. There's no money investment. It's just one little material that you can do. So there might be a bit of a play around having to choose a specific node, but for the most part, I believe you may be able to get at least 4, potentially 5, and then you may have to omit one of them But also you have this middle node, which is a bit of like an extra bonus based on alignment index, but that's a small statistic that I'm just going to omit for now because it's about stat management and whatnot, and it's a little bit more difficult to explain, you know, at least quickly, right? But this is essentially all the stuff that goes into building your character. Obviously, team composition is another factor, but for now, I'm just going to focus on the individual character themselves. These are the systems that you're going to have to indulge with, and they're quite good, quite alright, and I condone it. Thumbs up from me. Swiftly moving on, let's go on to how the story works. Now, the story works in a similar way to most games. It's just kind of like a stage-based system. You have the main story here, you click onto it, and you have a bunch of different chapters. Chapter 1, and it takes you through a bunch of different stages, you know, there's a bit of story. I didn't really pay attention to the story during my playtime. I didn't really want to, you know, play around with it because I didn't know there was an English dub. I had no idea if I knew that was there, I would have done it there, but I digress. You just kind of do stages, and the stages are kind of these small little quick fire matches where you shoot enemies and yada yada yada. You shoot them, you kill them, then the stage ends and you move on to the next one. And at the end of every chapter there's a boss. Each chapter has a different unique boss, but some of them are kind of similar but with a bit of a twist here and there. And as you progress, it obviously gets harder and you need higher levels and so on and so forth. I'm just kind of describing the general flow of most gacha games' story. There is a hard mode. It doesn't make it much harder. It's just more HP. The same stages but more HP. I'm not a massive fan of that. I would have liked half the stages, but maybe make them slightly different or something like that. I'm not exactly sure what I would have wanted, but it's the same stages, just higher HP thresholds. In the end, it's all going to be redundant once you get to max level, so pay it no mind. But the story, it kind of sounds cool. Some kind of Titan stuff is going on. Attack on Titan, Eren Yeager. I'm not sure really, but it sounds cool and whatnot. There's some cool looking bosses, I think. But that's the story. Yeah. Now, staying on this screen where we found the main story, we're going to go into a few of these side options here. Now, I'm going to go into operations here on the right side of the screen because this is going to be your material grinding section. This is where you're going to be able to grind all the materials that you're going to need to upgrade your characters or boost character power in some way or another. You have the currency nodes, you have the character XP nodes, weapon material ascension, weapon XP, you have your neuronic material, your logistics, all these different mechanics and all these different things that you're going to be able to grind here. It's a very simple and straightforward system, but this is where you're going to find that stuff. And now, slightly moving on to the quote-unquote endgame grind system, we're going to jump back to this screen and go down to personal files. Now, as I've said a few times before, you can grind character shards just by owning the character. All you have to do is own the character and you can farm the character shards indefinitely. You don't need 100% get a duplicate to max out a character, but it is going to take time. Now, once you unlock personal files, if you just get a character, you can click on one of their nodes and do a sequence of, you know, small story nodes to do with this character, and then you have these, you know, resumes, which is just a bit of story. Then you click on action, and this is going to take some energy. Not this one, the later one will take energy, but this one will give you a little bit of a trial demo with the character at very high level. You continue it, and at the end, you'll have action 2. Now, these are a daily thing. You have a resource that you can use called memory chips, and depending on the rarity of the character, 4-star or 5-star, it'll use a different amount. So, one 4-star character uses 2 chips per clear, and you can auto clear it to a max of 6 runs per one character of a 4-star. If we go back, obviously, on the 5-star Marianne here, you can see 2 out of 2 times. For 5 stars, you can only do this 2 times a day. It takes 3 memory chips instead of 2 and a bunch of energy, but if you auto clear it, do max, you'll be able to get 2 shards per day for one character. Now, that does sound quite obnoxious and quite large, but in the grand scheme of things, it's still quite generous in my opinion. It's quite a generous thing to be able to infinitely farm any character that you ever get in this game just by getting them one time. And so I'm willing to accept that that is a fine thing to have, although it is going to be exponentially more expensive as we've covered with how many shards you're going to need in the future. In my opinion, absolutely fine because, hey, free characters, am I right? Who doesn't like that? Jumping back to yet again this screen, now we're going to go into the actual endgame content. This is going to be in the dispatch menu. Now here you're going to have 4 game modes: the Underground Purge, the Neural Simulation, the Clash of Honor, and the Tactic Evaluation. Now to quickly cover Tactic Evaluation, because this is the simplest one and kind of like a one and done game mode, this is just going to be a bunch of different nodes that you do and complete them one time to get a standalone reward. You have 10 nodes. It's kind of like a story, but just kind of fighting enemies or like on repeat. There's no real story behind it. It's just kind of fight shit. And you got to go in here. There's going to be level 1. It's going to give you an affix and it's going to give you rewards. You complete it one time and it gives you the rewards done and dusted. The difficulty is exponential, and then you obviously have a few star ratings to get and a bunch of different things. And it's a simple system. It's a one and done system. Once you get it done, you don't have to come back to this. But that is what this system is, and I just want to get this one out of the way because it's not technically endgame grind, but it's in the dispatch menu. So that's that one. The Underground Purge, though, is one of the endgame grinds that we're going to be doing. Now, simply put, this is the Spiral Abyss from Genshin Impact. You have two modes. You have the Abandoned Area, and you have the Jotun Tunnel. The Abandoned Area is your, floor 1 to 8. It's going to be your standalone floors that are always here permanently. They don't reset. There's nothing to them. And once you get them done, that's all the rewards claimed from them. But once you get to the Jotun Tunnel, this is where the grind becomes a thing, and this is where the fortnightly reset is a thing. So every fortnight, the system resets, and you have another 4 sections to do, each section requiring 2 teams. If you click here, start, each section requires 2 teams, and each section, or formation rather, has different debuffs and buffs that they need to do and challenges. It's kind of hard. The UI is not really too great for this game mode right now. I think the UI could be fixed drastically, but you click here and then you have the challenges appear, District 1, 2, 3, and different challenges, different enemies, different archetypes, and essentially the Spiral Abyss system. I'm not going to go too deeply into it, but from this, you can obviously get the rewards, which consists of a bunch of gems, and mainly these little, I can't click on them right now to get their name, but these little helix, kind of cube-looking materials. Now, what is this material used for? Well, when you go into the shop section, this is to buy some specific of those logistics. These are the specific equipable cards, and that's to use to buy them. I'll cover this a bit more once we get to the shop section, but you use those here. Going on to the Neural Simulation, this is your Memorial Arena or your boss rush game mode. Now, I'm not going to jump into one of these because these 2 bosses are kind of difficult with my current setup, but this is your boss rush. You have, per week, I believe it is, 2 different bosses that are assigned as the current weekly bosses, and you go in there and fight them. You click start and you can, set some different modifiers. Let's say I want difficulty 7, boss level 80, and that'll give me a bunch of different modifiers that you can add, and if you equip all of them, you can see the rating here. The total stability is increasing, and the higher the stability, the higher the reward. But obviously, the higher the stability, the higher the difficulty. Now, I will tell you right now that I could not get anywhere near clearing this, obviously, because my characters are level 40 right now, so they're not really close to being able to clear this. So the content is quite difficult, and a lot of these bottom affixes here do add a lot of difficulty as they are extra effects, not just simple damage increases, but they are extra effects like more missiles, larger radiuses. They are added mechanics instead of just number increases. There are a lot of number increases, but there are also added mechanics. And I overall think this is a great game mode, and I think it's very enjoyable to do and test new characters and certain characters. But I will say certain characters are kind of meta for certain kind of bosses, like Marianne. The sniper is kind of required for Hela here. So that's something, but I guess that is kind of the point of meta and whatnot. But yeah, it's a very enjoyable game mode. This is your Memorial Arena, and from this you can get a bunch of different rewards, mainly this thing, the synthetic endorphins, which is used to buy some things. Again, I'll cover it once we get to the shop section. And the last game mode for this section is the Clash of Honor. Now, the name may deceive you. It is not a PvP system. Once you jump into this, it is essentially a defense, a kind of an area defense. You are placed into an arena and you have to just kill enemies on repeat for a while. It's not my favorite system in the game, as it's quite boring. You're just killing enemies on repeat. Now, that is kind of a fun thing to do if you have an enjoyable character, but the rewards don't really match up. You just kind of get a bunch of these cube things. These cube things are used to buy weapon attachments, which is kind of interesting and whatnot. But the game mode itself is rather simple. You just jump in, you get some info on monsters, you get some epic system, which is kind of the added affix for the week or whatever, and you just fight enemies for about a while. Now, you don't have to do this for a long time. It's only about 20 waves if you want to get the full rewards, and if you only want the currency, it's about 12 waves. So you don't have to do it for a long time, and once you get it done, you don't have to visit it again for the whole week. But I think it's just a bit of a boring system, at least for me personally. And that pretty much sums up this whole area. It's the endgame grind system. There is one more, which is the Gigalink, but that is a bit of a different one. The Gigalink is a bit odd, and it's kind of like a roguelike system that doesn't really give you too many rewards. And if anything, I'm going to say that this system needs to be reworked from the ground up because it's very, very odd. Be it the fact that it's permanently online, so there's going to be constant ping issues whether you're playing by yourself or with a team. The general rewards are mediocre at best, and they don't really give you much in the line of progression. and overall, I didn't really find it to be an enjoyable experience, at least for me playing in Australia from the Southeast Asia server. It wasn't an enjoyable experience, but maybe if they rework it, maybe if solo play kind of is actually solo play, and it doesn't take so long to get all the rewards, because I don't want to shit on it too much. It's kind of an interesting take. It's a roguelike system where you go in and pick buff cards, and you fight an arena of enemies, then pick another buff card, and so on and so forth. But it can get a bit monotonous because there's not too many gameplay changing cards, it's all just number increases. And that now does conclude all of the quote-unquote endgame grind systems. Those are all of them, and they are all kind of okay. I enjoy most of them, but a few of them are kind of a hit or miss in certain areas. Now, as I mentioned in the endgame system, there is a shop that you can buy things from using the materials that you get from those certain endgame systems. Now, jumping into it here at the bottom right of that screen, you have a variety of different shops. This is your standard shop. You buy standard things with standard currency here. You have your data resources, which is buying the rolling currency, which I will not be doing in this video. And that's standard. It's the same conversion rate as Genshin Impact. It's 160 of these gemmy juices up here in the top right, and that equals one roll. You can buy them for the weapon banner or the standard banner, and I presume when the featured banner becomes a thing, you can also buy it for the featured banner, which will be... Then you have the event exchange, and this is where you're going to be spending your endgame grind currency. Now, time to connect all the materials and where you get them from to what shop you do this with. The Clash of Honor, which is the arena kind of onslaught game mode that I mentioned, this is where you can buy the weapon attachments. Now, I'm going to mention this now. I forgot to mention it in the actual character building section, but weapon attachments is another way that you can build up your character's power, and they are simply attachments that you slap onto your weapon. They give you small stat boosts. As we click here on the stone Toro scope, it can give you a small stat boost in certain areas, like maybe crit rate or scope stability or weapon stability or whatever the hell. It can give you small stat boosts. I forgot to mention it in the character building section, but there are weapon attachments, which is kind of cool, and they change the visual representation of your weapon, which is also very interesting. But yes, Clash of Honor equals buying weapon attachments. It's the Underground Purge, as I mentioned in that section, gives you the material to buy these logistics. Now, these logistics are the better logistics. You can farm some 5-star logistics from the resource farming section, but these logistics here are going to be a little bit more of the best in slot for certain characters. The ones that you get in the other section, they're just kind of mediocre, kind of like filler pieces, but these ones here are a lot more best in slot for certain characters. And the Neural Simulation, which is your Memorial Arena section, will let you get resources to then buy character fragments. Now, you can't buy an excessive amount of character fragments for the 5-star. You can only buy 1 per reset, which is a bit stingy, but for the 4-star, you can actually buy quite a few, 15 in total. And then we go into the Circulation Hub, which is the next one. This is kind of, again, like a lot of the Genshin Impact systems that I mentioned before, another one that's kind of derived from it, where doing a roll will give you a certain material, and in this game it's called the Rationing Code, and this Rationing Code will let you buy a bunch of different materials, and every reset of something, it will let you buy some rolls. It's kind of a nice system, kind of handy to have for resources. And the last one we have is the Decomposition Lab. This is if you've maxed out a lot of your characters, if you've maxed out the manifestation of your character, you'll be able to then, when you get a duplicate of them, you'll be able to get some of these original Mori segments and so on, modified Mori segments if it's a 5-star. And this will let you get duplicates for other characters from using these shards, or you'll get more shards, essentially. Shard refunding once you've maxed out a character. It's a bit more of end game stuff, because obviously not every player is going to have this stuff maxed out, but it's kind of a useful system to obviously have in your game. And now for the final part of the video, the final section, let's just talk about a few of the small kind of uncategorized systems that you may encounter on the main menu. First of all, you have the tasks, which is your daily login stuff. You have your dailies, your weeklies, your targets, which are your achievements. I think they should probably rename that to achievements maybe. And then you have your main story, which is just the progression of the main story. You unlock a lot of basic resources that you'll need to further your account by doing certain threshold challenges, level 50, so on and so forth. And these can give you a lot of XP and whatnot. The daily and weekly challenges are a good source of XP, so be sure to do them. If I just click claim all, I'll probably level up here. I didn't, but I'm close enough probably. And that's that system. The other one that you have is the archives. This is a very useful system to come in and just see a lot of the things that you may collect around the map. So you have enemy intel giving you visuals and whatnot on the bosses. Now, one thing that they probably should include is maybe some, information about the statistics of the boss, HP at certain levels, resistances, maybe effective weapons and whatnot. I think that's very good information to have after you've obviously defeated the enemy, but also that you can just kind of have a look at some of the cool looking enemies. This lady's quite cool looking and whatnot, very good. You have the logistics, you have the weapons, and you can kind of find all the game's information here, which is very handy. The other system is up here in the top right. We have the Supernova. Now, I do believe this will be here on launch, and this one is just to get some early game power, much like the main story challenges that we saw in the tasks. This is just a small thing to give you a bit of a power boost in the early stages of the game, and after you do 7 days worth of challenges, you get a bunch of different rewards like rolls and gems and whatnot. You also at the end get a 5-star sniper rifle, the Olympus, and it's quite a nice challenge. You get a lot of rewards and rolls from this as well. And the final one is going to be in the events tab over here on the left side of the screen. We're going to click that, and it's going to be your daily login for the month, but it's also going to be the presence booster. Now, you'll be introduced to the system as you play the game, but I think it's important to note down that you'll have to come in here to claim these rewards all the time, and all it is just giving you 60 energy across the whole day just before the reset of the game. And the reason this is important is because energy, although some would claim that there's no energy issue in the game, and I would also stand by that there's no energy issue in the game, early on it does feel like there is an energy issue, so getting as much energy as you possibly can is always great. So having an extra 60 per day is very, very handy, so always be sure to claim that if you can. And then other than that, you have small ones like the storage, which is your inventory system. A lot of the systems are kind of generic to get to, but pretty much that sums up all the important systems that the game has to offer right now. I think the game overall is looking pretty good, and the horizon for the game is looking pretty positive, but I do think a lot of the areas need to be refined very, very minutely, mainly those end game grind areas. A lot of them feel, in certain areas, a bit rough around the edges. But hopefully this video did enlighten a lot of you on how Snowbreak is going to play in the long run, and maybe it has sparked an interest in some of you to want to play it. If it did help, and if you did enjoy the video, like and subscribe to the channel. Have a great day, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.